God needs us to shine its light, as me, as you. I don't know if need is the word, but it's what happens, because there's only that one. That one, we call it God, we call it spirit or source or universe or whatever you want to call it, but it is still that one that's source, the thing that is. It is. And we, because it is all there isn't anywhere it isn't. There's no spot God is not. And there's no thing God is not, because God is all there is. So God is. Shorthand, we say love, light, life, peace, power, beauty, joy. God is, yes, all these things. And we are, because we are of it, so are we. It's pretty simple. It's not always easy, but it's pretty simple. I am of that. So I do shine God's light. Each of us shines God's light to the best of our ability. And we join together in these communities, these gatherings on Sundays and whenever we come, to learn to with each other maybe how to do it a little bit brighter. And I am so grateful that we do this, because I can feel the joy in the room now, and every time we gather, the joy in the songs, and the joy in the laughter, the joy in just being together, rising up into the what feels like static and darkness and scariness of the world. But when we come here, I see it and feel it, the joy, the laughter, and the growth as each of us steps into a new perspective of ourselves, capable of a little bit more awareness, a little bit more possibilities. That mental equivalence, which we're going to hear about shortly, is all about that possible, the willingness to be bigger than we are. So we come here to reinforce that, at least I do, and I am grateful y'all help me. I am grateful for the way Spirit has brought me to this place, the Spirit as me. I am not separate from it. I don't beseech it. I just know it is of me, of each of us. And I'm so grateful for this. So I'm going to let this go now into that law that just says, welcome, you are here. Allow a little bit of new in. And I say yes. And I release my word into that law that's already got it going. As long as we're saying yes, it's got it going. Thank you, Spirit. And so it is.
So this whole month we've been looking at 4 core concepts, or we're about to look at the 4th core concept out of our teaching. And so we started off the first week with oneness. That everything is a oneness. We call it by so many names, yeah? We call it God, we call it the Tao, we call it Allah, we call it Jehovah, we call it infinite presence. We call it by so many names. There's a saying in Zen Buddhism that don't mistake the finger pointing at the moon for the moon. And so all the names are just fingers pointing at the moon. They're words to direct us towards something that's greater than we are, that's more infinite than we are, yes? And so the name doesn't, people get hung up on the names. Have you noticed? You know, if you're not using my name, you're going to someplace, bad, right? Or, I don't like the name you're using, so I'm not going to come to your church. Okay? All sorts of stuff like that. But they're all just fingers pointing at the moon, pointing us towards something ineffable, something bigger, infinite than we are. And so it's just a reminder to pay attention to that. So the first thing is oneness. Buffy in her prayer used a thing that we teach the kids, which is there is no spot where God is not. Substitute whatever word you want for God, okay? And so it's just that it's infinitely present everywhere. It's a oneness. It's a oneness. So there's nothing outside of a oneness, yes? Even that person you hate the most, they're still inside the oneness with you, yes? That's the bad news. And the good news. You know, dang, I want to hate that person and declare them as outside, but they're not. I can still hate them. Not that that's productive, but it's all oneness. The next thing we looked at was something called the law, which is how it works. The law is the law of cause and effect. What I put out comes back to me. As I put it out there, it reflects back into my own consciousness, into my own experience. And again, this is what I call one of the good news, bad news, of this teaching is, dang, if something is happening that I don't like, I've probably put something, especially in my personal life, I've probably put something out there that's showing up as that. We're going to talk about that more today, yeah? But that's the law. Ernest Holmes says that we approach love through law. So love is the infinite presence. Law is how it works. And so as we learn how to work with the law, as we learn how to be more in alignment with just being transmitters of love, of life, of good, of joy, we experience more of the divine. We don't have to work at it. It's just what it does. Then last week we talked about the creative process. We used that in our teaching symbol, but that we are creative and a reminder to tap into the higher level of creativity, which is beyond us, whether we want to call it God, Spirit, whatever, rather than just recycling our old mental ideas of what things should be, yes? Lift up higher to create something new, and that shows up in form. So today we're going to talk about expanding our own mentality. If you were here with me last week, you noticed that on the mental plane, there was the possibility of mental blocks, yes? Where it's like, I want something good, but I have this block that says I can't have it, I shouldn't have it, whatever, right? It's, Buffy earlier today in our own private little prayer used what was that, the impossibility of yes, it's gone. Yeah. And so there's nothing impossible in spirit, but there's lots that's impossible in our own mind, yes? Okay. And so today we're going to talk about something called the mental equivalent. And it's a clumsy term. Electrical engineer came up with it, okay? A guy named Emmett Fox. But what it basically says is that for everything we see, there is an equivalent in the mind first. There's an image in the mind first. Okay? And so everything in our life is a result of what we expect it to be, our expectations of how life is going to show up. Now, most of us grew up in atmospheres where we were told, go for it, anything's possible for you, yes? You're beautiful, you're wonderful, go after it. Okay, well, I wasn't either. And so sometimes we have to undo some of the stuff we learned as kids, yes? Okay? Some of the stuff that society wants to teach us. Okay? And so the mental equivalent is, what is my normal? What is my normal? What are my beliefs? What is my expectation? When I wake up in the morning, what kind of a day do I expect to have? When I interact with somebody, what do I expect? When I look at my checkbook, what do I expect? All of that shows up in form, but it's first built in mind. Emmett Fox, in the book, The Mental Equivalent, says the aim of the metaphysical movement, that's us, is to teach the practice of the presence of God. Now, that's a pretty high ideal, right? It's to teach the practice. We're practicing being the infinite in form. And the infinite is, well, it's infinite, yes? It's infinite in possibilities. The presence of God is unlimited, unbound. Can I use the word God? Is that okay with everybody? You know what I mean. It's not the big guy sitting in the sky with a long white beard, okay? Okay. The presence of God is unlimited, unbound, but we bind it into form through our thoughts and beliefs. And I don't mean that in a negative way. We focus it. Think of a camera. We focus it into saying, from this infinite possibility, I choose this. Yes? See, somebody had to choose out of the infinite possibility of all form, all that could be, to make that chair or the one you're sitting in, yes? That's called focusing it, okay? That's called binding it into form. So in our current life circumstances reveal our mental equivalent. Take a breath. The ones you like, the ones you don't like, they're all first created in our mind and then precipitate into form. And so all of our ideas of how prosperous or poor our beliefs are, and by prosperous I'm not talking necessarily about money, I'm talking about the fullness of life, of aliveness. How full or how restricted our life is set up in our mind. Breathe. That's the good news and bad news. The good news is that whatever we set up in our mind, we can change. Yes? Okay? We're not stuck there. There's no, well, I was just born this way and I cannot change. Okay? We can change it. In the Science Mind glossary in the textbook, Ernest says, describes mental equivalence as having a subjective idea of the desired experience. Now, he talks about subjective as opposed to objective. Subjective means we feel it. It's in our gut. Yes? Elsewhere in the book, he says we don't get what we wish for, we get what we are. And the mental equivalent is what we are. If I'm the kind of person who I absolutely know in my gut that I'm a loving person, I'm going to experience love in my life. Yes? I'm going to have loving relationships. If I absolutely in my gut know that I'm a healthy person, I know I'm rooted in the aliveness and the vibrant health of the divine, I know that that's what's going to show up, even if stuff comes along that says, can I distract you over here? Where you say, well, yeah, you can, but the truth of me is, this is the core, this is who I am. So the mental equivalent is having a subjective idea of the desired experience. As we bring ourselves to a greater vision than the range of our present concepts, we can then induce a greater concept and thereby demonstrate more in our experience. As we rise up in our view of how good we can stand it. Yes? As we expand in how good we can have it. As we start to realize that despite what we may have been told in the past, there's no limits to our experience of good in any form. As we rise up above that, we can see more possibility. Sounds simple, right? And it is simple. It's not necessarily easy. It's not just changing our thought for 10 seconds or even 10 days, but steadily and permanently. We build a more expanded mental equivalent by thinking with two qualities, clarity and definiteness. Clarity or definiteness, and interest or feeling. Thinking with clarity or definiteness. If I walk into a restaurant and I say, give me something good, the server is probably going to bring me what they think is good. Might be Brussels sprouts and a well-done steak. Those who know me well know that I don't eat red meat or poultry, okay? And those who know me a little better know that I don't like Brussels sprouts. Please do not give me your favorite recipe for Brussels sprouts afterwards. My mental equivalent is I don't like Brussels sprouts and I'm sticking to it. So thinking with clarity or definiteness. So this chair didn't get formed by just somebody going, oh, la-ti-da, I'm going to think about something. It's, no, I want something to be able to sit on, to support people with, and what it looks like, okay? So we think with clarity or definiteness about what we want. And we think with interest or feeling. That's what adds the juice to it, is our interest. See, if I want a new car, I get interested in new cars, yes? And if I want a certain new car, I get interested in looking at that and exploring that. Those of you who know me know I wanted a Mazda Miata for about 30 years before it took about 23 of those years before it actually showed up in my life, right? But I was interested. I was always researching it. I was test driving them whenever I could. All this stuff, I had interest and passion and feeling about it. If you want something, it's be definite for what you want, not so limited, not so narrow, but definite and at least in the general direction that you want. I want a car that I love. I want a home that I love, that I feel good in. I want a relationship in which I experience joy and love and peace. Okay? Being definite and then with interest and with feeling. So whatever we want, we form a mental equivalent of it through thinking about it a great deal and by being interested in it. Yes? So most people use their minds to think about how right they currently are, and protecting themselves in their own view, right? I just demonstrated that when I said, I'm committed to being against Brussels sprouts, right? Okay? That is, the misuse of mental equivalent. That's how the mind, most of our minds want to say, okay, I got my little comfort zone right here, and I don't want to expand it because I'm comfortable in it. And if I change, that might be discomforting, right? Okay. Breathe. And so we fear the discomfort from change, and so they think with clarity on what they already have and what they already know. Yes? I think clearly on, this is it. I've got my reasons. Don't try to confuse me with facts. I've got my opinions, right? I live in an infinitely prosperous universe, but I can't make that any more money than I make now. I'm on a fixed income. I hear that a lot from people, right? The universe doesn't have a fixed income, does it? Nope. Who creates fixed income? Me. Breathe. We do. And we can change that. If we want to expand our mental equivalent, we have to overcome the tendency of the mind to stay where it is by thinking quietly and consistently and persistently of the thing we want, whether it's relationships, whether it's some object, whether it's greater health or a deeper relationship, deeper understanding, deeper experience of the divine within ourselves. Whatever it is, we have to create that mental equivalent by taking the time to focus on that. And most of the time, our lives will tend to want to bring us back to where we are and what we have. And so we have to be conscious and say, thank you very much. Yes, this is where I am, but this is not where I have to stay. I can do something new. I can do something fresh. I can do something more. Buckminster Fuller, one of my favorite quotes is, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. A lot of people try and fight their existing reality. I can't get rid of these 5 pounds. I'm fighting that. Rather than having the model of, I am slim, lean, mean, healthy, fabulous person, whatever. Whatever it is you build in your mind. So we try and struggle with this, and that just adds power to what I don't want. Yeah? Just adds power to what I don't want. So building a new reality, a new model in our mind. So we build it first in our mind, knowing that it has to take form. In the class workbook for the mental equivalence class, which I'm going to talk about in a few minutes, it says the law of mental equivalence is like a centrifuge that expels the exact thing you have deeply lodged in your subconscious mind into form. So you've got this in your mind, and it's expelling it out into form. It never stops working. It never stops working. So the experience you are currently living is the equivalent of what you mentally picture as yourself at this moment deep within your own mind. Yes? The experience, the life that you're now living is what you experienced in your own mind. See, at some point in time, actually when I was quite young, I wanted to be a priest. I grew up Catholic. I wanted to be a priest. I knew that I wanted to do something, because I was in love with God from the time I was a little kid, to do something that expressed that. Right? Now, I let that go, because I left the Catholic Church, and I let all that go, and I wandered for a long time. But I was always doing something with spirituality, because it was always, in my mind. And so one day, my second wife decided that she wanted to be a minister, and so we went to an informational meeting about going to ministerial school. I had no intention, excepting that on the drive home I went, why wouldn't I be a minister? I've been the kid who's been playing, building altars in my basement, saying Mass when my friends were all playing baseball. I've been the Zen Buddhist and the Taoist, and I've been in love with spirit for my whole life. Why the heck wouldn't I, right? And so that mental equivalent got kind of awakened within me. And sometimes we have to have something that kind of stimulates that seed that's been sitting there for a while. And we finally feed it and say yes. And what happens when we say yes is it starts to unfold. And that was 20 years ago, right? And so I've been on this path for that amount of time. At first it looked like we didn't have enough money, and all of a sudden $50,000, which is what we needed to go through ministerial school, showed up. Showed up. Okay, got it? So this is what happens when we say yes to the greater expansion of our good. So what we're doing this whole month is we're having a little conversation. We're having a couple of questions, and I'm inviting you to kind of take your chairs and form them into little groups to where you can talk to each other. And so we have two questions for you today to contemplate, to talk with each other about. And that is, number one, how have I used the law of mental equivalence to create something that I want and to create something I don't want in my life? Because we can use it both ways, yes? Okay? That's the first question. And then the second question is, how will I support myself in building a new mental equivalent? So I invite you to gather around. We've got about 10 minutes that we'll do this for, and chat with each other, and just share anything that you want to about that process. Go for it.
All right. Well, what we heard was that we have been doing it our whole lives. We have been creating our whole lives. And now that we know that we've been working the law our whole lives, we can say it wasn't luck. It wasn't circumstance. It wasn't happenstance. It was because I set it in motion. I set the law in motion. And that's what showed up, for good or bad.
Thank you. Anybody else, any ahas or anything you'd like to share real quick? Teresa.
I would say that whatever or however you decide you get your mental equivalence, then continue to do that. That sometimes we need a process and need to start with a process. Like here we do the 5-step visioning process, and the first question is what's Spirit's vision of this for us?
Yeah.
And then to ask that, because sometimes we can't see something because we need to see something that's greater than we are.
Yes.
And something, that's the idea.
Yes. Thank you. Beautiful. One more? Anybody? Justin.
I think of mental equivalency I think of mental equivalency as a perspective. As we were sharing, a lot of these are kind of, we're in a situation where we're here to listen to our neighbor, but in reality we should listen to ourselves. We say something out loud and we kind of think of it in a negative perspective, or that kind of dreading feeling of this is what it is, as opposed to when you hear someone else, you see the optimistic. If you're able to step back and see that perception of yourself, it's positive. It's a tough decision at the moment, but it is a successful outcome for yourself. And I think that's where we tend to get caught in that feeling of, there's that feeling of, I'm dreading this, but then there's that idea of what the future looks like. That if we lean more towards that thought, it becomes more of the feeling. And then you start manifesting that into your life. But
Yes. Thank you. Are you reaching for it?
Bravery?
Yes. And Kathy, you had one. Your hand up.
Well, I just have come to realize in recent years that that I was actually the responsible for the outcome, all the negative outcomes of my life. So I was awakened and became aware of these sort of concepts that I could work and change, and it's been exhausting, but also rewarding. So this is, I love it.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. So yeah, we are responsible. That's like, I always like to say, the good news, bad news of our teaching. Oh, okay, that's what's going on there. So, the key to all this is to change your mind and keep it changed. Keep it changed, right? Emmett Fox uses the metaphor of having a camera that's doing a long exposure, and you want to have a picture of a vase of flowers, and so you put a vase of flowers in front of the camera. and then you take it away and you put a dog in front of the camera, and then you take that away and you put a chair in front of the camera, and then you take that away and you put the vase of flowers back in, what's the image you're going to end up with? Something confused and blurry, yes? Okay, so it's keeping it changed rather than just saying, well, today I'm going to think about this for 5 seconds, and then tomorrow I'm going to think about the opposite of that, my old stuff, for 3 hours, right? So it's keeping it changed. So I want to do a quick reading out of the book that he did, that he suggested, that I think kind of illustrates that really well. This is from a talk in 1943 to a group of Unity folks. So you might recognize something in here that stuff hasn't changed. He says, of course, changing your thought for a short time is the easiest thing in the world. Everyone does this while attending a metaphysical meeting, such as the beautiful atmosphere, the wonderful music, and the positive instruction make people feel optimistic. The teacher reminds the audience of the truth of being, and each person thinks, I believe that, and I'm going to practice that. But 5 minutes after leaving the meeting, the people forget about it, perhaps for hours. The trouble with most students is not that they do not change their thought, but they do not keep it changed. So that was why the second question was, how are you going to support yourself in continuing that? So our practice this week is to consciously choose a new mental equivalent in some area of your life and think on it with clarity and interest. Bring your mind back to that image when it wants to go back to the old one. I think of it as, it's sort of like meditation. If those of you who have done meditation, if you've ever done meditation, you might notice that your mind wanders. We call it monkey mind or chattering mind. And it's just, you got to bring it back, and you got to bring it back. No, I'm not going to go that way. I'm going to go this way. Bring it back. And so that's the practice, is to choose what it is that you create the mental equivalent of what you want, and then bring it back. And when it wants to go back to the old one, remember the camera lens of your mind is always focused on that. Are you willing to play with that practice? Yes. If you want to go deeper into this, I'm going to be doing a class on mental equivalence, a 5-week class starting June 17th on Wednesday evenings from 6:30 to 8:30. And you can sign up for it. It's already on the website. You can sign up for that. And I invite you to do that if you want to play with this and practice this more. Set your mental equivalent to taking the class, yes, and to getting a wonderful positive benefit out of it. So we have an affirmation. It's up on the screen. Join me. I expand my idea of how much good I can accept and keep it expanded and expanding. Let's say it one more time. I expand my idea of how much good I can accept, and I keep it expanded and expanding. And so it is.